Hey everyone, this is Brandon Oliveris, and I'm here for our new weekly series called Readers' Questions. I know that's super original, but I like to keep things pretty simple. But in this series, I will have a video every Monday answering a reader's question about the law of attraction. And my goal is to have these videos be about 5 to 10 minutes in length, so I'm going to try to keep them pretty short overall. Of course, in order to do this, I will actually need questions. So if you would like to have your question answered, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/ask and ask your question there. So today we have a question from Lisa about action. It's actually a really, really good question, so I'm excited to answer it today. Lisa asks, what is the ideal relationship for action, momentum, and resistance? I enjoyed your blog posts and podcasts on momentum and resistance, but I wasn't sure how action fit into it all. Is it better to take action when your momentum and resistance are low, or when they are high, or does it matter? Now, this is actually a really great question, as I said, and it helps me to realize that I could have expanded on a few more points around this in my recent podcast on this issue. I had a recent podcast. It was Co-Create Your Life number 19, The Opposing Forces Behind the Law of Attraction. I will put a link to that in the description of the video and in the transcript. So in that podcast, I talked about momentum versus resistance as those two opposing forces, and that both are needed. You just have to keep them in the right proportion to one another. So I want to give a bit of background because I see a little misconception that you have, Lisa, about resistance, and I realize that this could have arisen from what I said in the podcast, so I want to clarify that right now. There are two types of resistance, okay? There is one resistance that comes up naturally when you have high momentum, and then there's the actual resistance end of what I'm calling the spectrum of manifestation. The spectrum of manifestation is, I didn't really call it this during the podcast, but it's a really good name for it. Basically, it has two ends. There's the momentum end, which is the positive, and there's the resistance end. Okay, and if you remember in the podcast, I talked about you want to stay in momentum. If you push the momentum too much and the resistance gets too much to handle, you will get caught up on the negative end. Okay, it will catch you, you'll get stuck in there, and it's a negative, all right? So you don't want that. So there's a difference, though, between the resistance you get on the positive end, the momentum end of the spectrum of manifestation, versus the resistance you get stuck in on the negative end. So on the positive end, there is what you could call tension. Okay, that might be a better name than resistance, because a lot of people give a lot of negative baggage to the word resistance. Okay, if you remember, for those who have been around on my blog for a while, last year I wrote a lot about what I called creative tension or structural tension, and this is heavily borrowed from the work of Robert Fritz, okay, who wrote Path of Least Resistance, which I highly recommend. It's a great book, even though he's a little skeptical on the law of attraction as it is. But it's a wonderful book that can help you in understanding all of this. But I talked about structural tension, and that is the awareness, basically, that here's what I want, here's where I am, they don't match. That's all that is. Here's what I want, here's where I am, they don't match, okay? Let's say you want to double your income, okay? So let's say you say to yourself, all right, right now I'm making $40,000 a year, and I'd love to be making $80,000. That's where I want to be, $80,000 a year. This is where I am, $40,000 a year. They don't match. That's tension, okay? Because when you're focusing on what you want and your reality is focusing on what you have, there is a conflict, and that's tension, also known as resistance. The great thing about tension is that when you have that disparity between where you are and where you want to be, it is naturally going to trigger those subconscious programs that are in the way. Okay, and that's not really relevant to today's topic, but it's just something that's good to keep in mind. I talk about that a lot in my Art of Reality Creation 2.0, so you can get more about that there. But essentially, this tension is that gap, between where you are and where you want to be, and that awareness is the feeling of resistance, the feeling of tension, the feeling of, I'm not there yet, and I don't know when I will be there, but I'm working on it, and in general, I feel positive. Okay, so that's the positive end. The negative end is when I feel anxious. I feel obsessed about the resistance. I just feel really, really negative overall. All right, that's when you're caught up in resistance. Those are two different things. Tension as part of momentum is a net positive, but resistance on its own, when you've gone too far and you're just caught up in that resistance and you cannot manage it, is a net negative, and you really don't want to get caught up there. So the reason I mention this is because, when you say momentum and resistance are high, I think you're sort of thinking that they automatically go together, which in a way, yes, again, they do. There is the tension there when you have high momentum. Okay? But it's, again, a net positive. That's the thing to keep in mind. It's a net positive. It's not like a balancing act where it's, okay, well, I have 10 units of momentum and 10 units of resistance, and they're balanced at 0, and so that's where I am. It's not that at all. It's a net positive because you're managing the resistance, you're managing the tension. You are, these negative programs are coming up from the subconscious, and you are handling them, and you're working through them, and it feels good, and it's a really great place to be in. So that is where you are on the momentum end of the spectrum of manifestation. When you're in the resistance end, then it's a net negative, like I said, and you are stuck, and it's not a good place to be. So when you're talking about action, you want to act out of a positive place. We know this. This is pretty basic, right? So you want to make sure you're acting out of a positive place. You don't want to act out of low momentum. Why? Because nothing much is going to happen. I mean, if you act on something that you're not really feeling much for, what's going to happen? Okay, maybe something, but it'd be very small, right? And anyway, I mean, why would you want to? I mean, if you have a powerful desire, what are you going to do? Are you going to intentionally back off on it? Are you going to intentionally turn down the volume on that desire because you want to act and get a good result? That's sort of shooting yourself in the foot, because if you were able to do that, it wouldn't really be a powerful desire to begin with. I mean, yes, you can slow down your momentum to a certain extent, but not to the extent of where you're actually in low momentum without really some other stuff going on, at the same time. I've seen this happen when people are afraid of change, and so it's sort of like they want to change, but they're too afraid to, so they're sort of keeping things safe in a low momentum kind of phase. You don't want that. It's not a really nice place to be. It's boring. It's just not very nice. So you want the high momentum, just not so high that the resistance is overwhelming. And you want to act out of high momentum. The higher the momentum, the better, because when your momentum is high, guess what? You get big results. Because in life, you get out what you put into it. In pretty much any area of life, that's going to be true. You get out what you put into it. If you put into it a lot of momentum, a lot of emotions, a lot of desire, which is energy, you get out a big result if you act out of it. Now, so what I want to clarify is this. When you are on the positive end of the spectrum of manifestation, when you're in the momentum end, you are automatically going to act out of a positive frame of mind, and therefore you will tend to get positive results. So, like I said, I think your fear was, oh, if I have resistance, then there's a chance that I act out of a resistant frame of mind, and I don't want that, and, so what should I do? No, it's you have the resistance managed when you are on the positive end, and so overall it's a net positive, and therefore when you act, it's positive. Okay, and you'll be drawn to those things that will get you a positive result. And when you act on it, you will get a positive result more times than not. So that is what you have to keep in mind. If you are on the negative end, if you have a lot of resistance and you're caught up in it and you're stuck in it and you're obsessing about it, then you will get negative things. You don't want that. But if you're on the positive end and you're led to some action, which you will be because it's the natural part, it's the natural process of things, it's going to be good. Okay? So don't fear that. And, it's always important to know where you are. Are you in resistance end or are you in the momentum end? Because, that is going to tell you how you need to proceed from here. Right? So again, if you're on that positive end, act. But you're not going to act out of fear because you're on the positive end. It's just not going to happen. You're going to act out of desire, out of abundance, out of fulfillment, and it's going to be great. So that is what's going to happen. So always act out of high momentum, as high as you can get it. But again, always keep the resistance bearable. Always keep the tension to a level that you can actually manage it. So that's what the balancing act is, okay? So I hope that answered your question. Again, I appreciate it because it helped me to know what I need to expand on more, and maybe I'll expand on some of those points in a future blog posts about the 2 types of resistance. Again, for all the other listeners, if you would like to have your question answered, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/ask, and that will add your question to the queue. And if you would like to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Or if you're not already on the blog, go to my blog at cocreationcoaching.org. And I also have a transcript of this video available over there. So you can see that and leave a comment. Thank you for listening. And as always, anything is possible.